$10 buys you a backpack, 4 heroes, and a dice roll that decides the run. The backpack is the real combat system. Lootbound is Tetris in a dark fantasy costume, and I mean that as a compliment. You're playing a turn-based tactical roguelite where the bag does half the fighting. You pick a hero, then build out to a party of 3 by recruiting companions along the route, and you push through procedurally generated paths stacked with fights, chests, shops, and events. In combat, you control your main hero directly, while the companions act off their own kits and their own gear. Every win drops loot, and every piece of loot has to physically fit inside a grid. Rotate it, shove it, dump something older to make room. Items project auras, radius effects that reach into the slots around them. So where a thing sits matters as much as what it does. One clean run lands somewhere around 40 to 60 minutes. That's the whole loop in one breath. Now, here's what turns that from a gimmick into the actual game. The inventory isn't storage, it's the character sheet. Slide a ring 1 square to the left, and its aura stops touching your weapon and starts feeding your armor instead, and the entire build reorganizes around that one move. I care about this more than almost anything else in a roguelite, because build diversity is the first thing I check. If 2 runs feel structurally identical, the genre has failed its own promise to me, and this passes that test in the most literal way I've seen. The pressure comes from space. You will always have more good items than squares, so every pickup turns into a small argument with yourself about what gets cut and what gets reshuffled to keep an aura in range. It's a layered system in the honest sense. Geometry, stat priority, damage typing, and aura coverage all fighting over the same few inches of canvas, and it extends outward, which I didn't expect. I assumed I'd hoard the best gear on my protagonist and let the companions tag along as damage sponges. Wrong. Handing the strong pieces down to your companions pays off constantly, and that's the moment the party stops being an escort mission and starts being a squad you're actually equipping. But the grid alone wouldn't hold me. What holds me is what sits behind it. There are 4 playable characters, each with their own abilities and their own tier upgrades to grind out, and the meta layer keeps handing you new toys, different dice sets you can buy, shop items you unlock through the laboratory, an arena waiting further in. Every one of those unlocks is basically an experiment I want to run immediately, and that's the pull for me, not completing the game, testing the variants. I want to know what a new die does to a build I already like, and I want to know whether the character I ignored for 6 runs breaks the whole thing open. The risk versus reward layer feeds the same itch, where you're constantly picking between the safe route and the greedy one, and the greedy one is exactly the kind of decision that gives a run its shape. The discovery hook did its job on me here, and that matters, because for me the first stretch of a roguelite is either exciting or it's homework. This one's exciting. Whether it stays that way is a different question, and that's where the cracks start showing. If this is saving you a bad $10 guess, a like actually helps the channel. Now, the flip side, and there's a real one, the opening is a wall. Your early character choice barely matters because you don't have the upgrades yet, so the first stretch is mostly you eating losses to fund unlocks. Some of the harshest write-ups come from exactly that window, and I understand them completely, even if I think they quit before the game started. If you bounce off frustration fast, this asks for patience. It hasn't earned yet at the point where it's asking, and here's the part I can't wave away because it's not a difficulty complaint, it's a design one. The dice. Chests and Smith rewards make you roll to claim what's inside, and half the time the thing inside doesn't fit your build anyway, so you burn a roll to find out you didn't want it. Extra randomness layered on top of a game that already generates randomness through the path, the drops, and the companion behavior you can't directly control. The legendaries land the same way for me, technically rarer, functionally not that interesting next to a common item whose aura happens to hit the right 3 slots. And when a run ends, everything you built vanishes. If the meta unlocks don't have you by then, there's no reason to load it again. Then there's the tail end, and I'm going to be straight about it because it's the pattern I fall into with these games. The final fight was a brutal spike at launch, the kind that one-shots you regardless of how clean your run looked, and the fix was a balance patch that lowered the boss's health. Now, part of the reception says the challenge got sanded off entirely and the whole thing is too easy after a few hours. Both of those complaints are real, they're just from opposite directions, and the discourse is genuinely split down the middle on it. My honest read. The mid-game arc is where this game is at its best. The stretch where you've got enough unlocked to experiment but not enough to steamroll. I'm the kind of person who rarely sees the end of a strategy game anyway, and this one didn't fix that in me. The organization is also clunkier than it should be for a game built entirely around organization. Shuffling a full bag is tedious enough that I sometimes just didn't, which is a weird thing to say about the headline mechanic. So who should get this? Get it if the sentence "moving an item one slot changes my build" made you sit up, because that's the entire pitch, and it delivers on it. Get it if you want a roguelite. You can fire up for 40 minutes and close, dopamine collected, without surrendering an evening. Get it if you like RPG class fantasy, but don't have 60 hours for a proper campaign, because 4 characters with separate kits and separate upgrade tiers scratches that in short chunks. Skip it if you need your randomness to feel fair, because the dice layer stacks on top of everything else, and it will take runs away from you for reasons that aren't about your decisions. Skip it if a total item wipe at the end of a run kills your motivation, since nothing carries forward except the meta unlocks. And skip it if you're chasing a hard, hostile roguelite with a real difficulty ceiling, because that version of this game existed at launch and got patched into something softer. Here's the thing that decides it, and it's not the combat or the art, both of which are doing fine. The dark fantasy pixel work is legitimately good, and the party actually feels like a party. It's the grid. If arranging a backpack so that 4 auras overlap correctly sounds like a puzzle you want to solve 20 times, everything else in this game falls into place around that pleasure, and the grind ceiling stops mattering. If it sounds like inventory admin, no amount of good art or clean turn-based combat is going to save it for you, and you'll hit the wall the negative write-ups describe within a couple of runs. For me, it landed on the right side. At under $10, with 40 to 60 minute runs and 4 characters worth of upgrade paths still ahead of me, that's an easy call. Lootbound is a buy. And unusually for a game at this price, there's a demo on Steam, so you can test whether the backpack clicks for you before you spend a cent, which is exactly what I'd do if you're on the fence. I'll say the uncomfortable part out loud. Caving on the difficulty patch was a mistake, and the version of this game that one-shot everybody at the final fight was the better version. Was I wrong about the dice though? Tell me the roll that lost you a run you'd earned, or tell me it never happened to you when the system's fine. Straight answers on games worth your money. See you in the next one.